on today's Story Beat.
The most important thing you can do is be funny, no matter what, and start writing comedy and go, I can't do that. Well, start anyway, and get in a comedy club and start learning how to bomb. You know, it's very important to stand in front of an audience and just fail, because you get used to failing, you'll get good, and start writing about your life and just be perfectly honest about it. If you want to be a dancer or a writer, whatever you want to be, just start developing comedy.
This is StoryBeat with Steve Cuden, a podcast for the creative mind. StoryBeat explores how masters of creativity develop and produce brilliant works that people everywhere love and admire. So join us as we discover how talented creators find success in the worlds of imagination and entertainment. Here now is your host, Steve Cuden.
Thanks for joining us on StoryBeat. We're coming to you from the Steel City, Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. My guest today, Robert Shields, is a one-man creative machine who has spent his life sharing his sense of energy, awe, and wonder with people all over the world. After graduating from North Hollywood High School, Robert left for Canada to join a traveling circus as Robbie the Robot. Discovered at the age of 18 by the legendary mime Marcel Marceau, he was offered a full scholarship at Marceau's school in Paris. His apprenticeship, however, was short-lived, as he felt the need to develop his own style and pry Mime loose from its artsy pedestal. Robert chose San Francisco, where at 19, he used his wit, sensitivity, imagination, and agility to fascinate his audience and become San Francisco's main tourist attraction. After meeting Lorene Yarnell, they formed the much lauded mime duo of Shields and Yarnell. Together, they played stages worldwide and appeared in various film productions and on over 400 national TV shows. They even headlined their own show, appropriately called Shields and Yarnell. Additionally, Robert's original scripted TV special, Toys on the Town, earned Shields and Yarnell an Emmy. Shields and Yarnell also wowed Las Vegas audiences, where they won the Las Vegas Entertainers of the Year award 2 years in a row. Of note, Robert is credited for being the originator of The Robot. An hour-long documentary is coming out soon about Robert's life as a robot. Eventually, Robert made a natural progression from being a creative mime to becoming a creative jeweler, sculptor, and painter. His fascination with design, color, texture, and form leads to sublime and captivating one-of-a-kind pieces of art. The result of his constant pursuit of fresh and exciting concepts has rendered his works exceptional and collectible, and I know because I have a couple pieces of Robert's beautiful art on my walls. Robert lives in Verde Valley, Arizona, where he continues to sculpt, paint, design jewelry, and write comedy. For more, please be sure to check out robertshields.com. For me, this is a huge honor and an exceptionally big thrill to have someone I've admired for so long, the spectacularly talented Robert Shields, as my guest on StoryBeat today. Robert, welcome to the show.
Wow, thanks for that introduction. That was really nice.
Well earned over a very long period.
I haven't heard that stuff for a while, so it's like, wow, that's like, man, what a career.
It's almost like you've done a few things.
Yeah, I just never think about it. I just think about what I'm going to do today. I don't, but it's great to.
You're a very forward-looking person. You don't look back too much.
No, I don't.
I think that's what makes you constantly renewing your source of creativity, is that you're looking forward. So, all right, let's go back a little bit, though. I know you don't want to look back, but it's helpful for the listeners to understand the history of what you've done. So you've been at the game of performance and then art for quite some time. How old were you when the bug first bit you to start performing?
I was 5 years old.
5. What happened?
It was my father brought home this album called Joe Finger's Car. Okay. And it was ragtime. And my dad loved music. He loved music from the 30s, the 40s, and Dixieland and stuff like that. And Joe Fingers was a brilliant, brilliant piano player. And his real name was Lou Bush. And back in the 50s, a ragtime barroom piano boogie woogie stuff was really big. There was Big Tiny Little, Joe Finger's Car, Castle, a bunch of people. Scott Joplin was way before that, but he put on 12th Street Rag And 12th Street Rag goes like anyway, so I just started dancing, man. I just started dancing, like dancing. And and my family were just, their eyes were bugged out because I was dancing right to the rhythm. And all of a sudden I started doing parties and bar mitzvahs and weddings.
You were making money.
I didn't make any money, but I charged a cover, but no one paid it. But I started doing all these gigs, you know, for family gigs. I do a wedding, they go, is Robert gonna dance? Was Robert so? And then it became quite sensational until I turned around 8, 10, and it wasn't so cute anymore. And I became more temperamental about it. The music had to start on the right thing. I had to take a running start. I was, you know, it had to be the right situation.
You actually started to program it a bit. You started to write it.
Right, I did. And then my mother would put me to sleep. She was so proud of me. And she goes, someday your name is going to be in lights.
Wow.
You're just like Ray Bolger. I didn't even know who he was. I was an eccentric dancer, you know, flipping and flopping and moving right to the beat of that shit. And nobody really did that then. And
so you were a natural.
I was a natural, man, you know. Yeah.
You didn't get any schooling or training for it early on, did you?
No, they decided they were going to take me to dance class. They took me to ballet class. I quit within a few days. I couldn't handle it.
Did you imitate people too? Were you imitating styles and stuff like that?
I was imitating things I saw, but I was never really imitating people. I imitated animals and stuff like
animals.
that. Yeah, animals. But that's how I started, was doing that.
And were you getting laughs too?
More just, people were just amazed. I mean, if you see the Shields and Yarnell stuff and the acrobatics that I do, that's still in there. Like I would do backflips and front flips and all that stuff. And it was just, you know, people were just more amazed that I was keeping time with the music so well.
And do you think back then that you had a sense that you would then be in the arts somehow your whole life?
Well, my mother used to say, someday your name's going to be in lights. I was only 5 or 6. I would imagine my name in lights. So maybe it had something. I'd go to sleep with like my name in lights. I go, what does that mean? My name in lights? I don't understand it. You know, so I think it had some kind of deep seed that was planted back then that kind of created who I became.
So there wasn't a path laid out for you. It wasn't like your mom was a showbiz mom, was she? She didn't.
No, not at all.
She didn't drag you to auditions and stuff. So you sort of found your own way. At what point did you start to think about miming? Was that before you met Marceau, or was it after you met Marceau?
No, I got a gig at the I went to this thing called the Teenage Fair, and there was a girl up there, and she was standing as a mannequin. She wasn't moving. She was just a mannequin. And it was a sideshow, and I was wearing a cape and crazy costumes, and you know, we did that back then. I was like looked like a kind of a flamenco gypsy, and I said, God, it would really be great if she moved her head and moved her arm, and the owner of the show said, hey kid, why don't you get up there and do that? So I've never had any fear, so I just jumped up and I just did what she did. And I just moved my head and moved my arm. And that was the beginning of the robot. And he hired me, and I went on to Royal American shows and traveled all throughout Canada.
This was when you were a late teenager, yeah?
Yeah, late teenager, yeah. So I didn't do any show business until then. Oh yeah, that's right. I forgot to tell you. In high school, the dance teacher said there's no boys in the dance class.
Oh.
And I would love it if there was a boy in the dance class. Well, it was 40 girls. And, you know, I've always known how to dance. So I went, hell yeah, I'll go in there with all those girls. And of course, all the guys thought I was, you know, whatever, but I didn't care. I just was with 40 girls, and they built the shows around me, you know, because I lift them up and dance. So I kind of was a little star in the dance class in high school, but that's about it.
And I think what I'm guessing is important to this is that you actually enjoyed it. It wasn't like it was a burden to you to do any of that.
Oh, it was great. And in fact, in junior high, I took a drama class, and there was one thing where you had to do a pantomime. And I did a pantomime of a thing called A Motorcycle Guy, and that became a classic piece for me. And So it's kind of started little dribbles and drabbles in junior high and high school and stuff like that.
So the motorcycle guy was your own creation. It wasn't, you weren't doing something that somebody asked you to do. You came up with it.
Yeah, she said, we want you to tomorrow do a pantomime. She explained what pantomime meant, of something that you can relate to in your life, getting up in the morning, going to work, doing this, an animal, a story. I want you to tell a story, beginning, middle, and end. And she explained what a pantomime is. And I came the next day and did a pantomime of a guy putting on a coat and zipping up zippers and hopping on a bike and getting on the bike and making love to a girl and throwing her off and taking a gun out and doing all these biker things that bikers do, and driving down the street and bugs flying in my face, and she just couldn't believe it. And the class went nuts, and that was the beginning of that. I was quite a hit. So I think that was in junior high.
And you didn't really know what you were doing, but you did know what you were doing, right?
Didn't know what I was doing, but I had tremendous enthusiasm. And I really always liked looking at bikers. I thought they were cool. I don't know. Back in the day, bikers were really bikers. They didn't have things on their back that said Harley Davidson. They weren't corporate bikers. They were really like bikers. Their names were like the Gallop and Gooses. And these guys never took baths. They have chopped hogs all throughout Fresno, Bakersfield, the Hells Angels. You know the story.
I do.
I just thought they looked like, whoa, those, you're scared of them, so I like to imitate the way they walked, they were like, yeah, fuck you, man,
Well, in the clips that I've seen of you working later, we'll get to San Francisco too, but when I saw you working later, you would do a bit of that kind of tough guy, biker kind of guy in your moving around in the streets with people.
Yeah. I would do a lot of characters, and that was definitely one of them.
Right.
And I would also do chickens and doves and lizards and monkeys and hookers and all kinds of stuff.
So then you did something that so many people talk about doing but never do, and that's you ran off and joined the circus.
I did. I got a job from that teenage fair. The guy actually hired me to become an attraction in a sideshow. I was Robbie the Robot. And he would come out and he would say, ladies and gentlemen, Robbie the Robot, latex rubber glass eyes, $6,000 of mechanical ingenious. No one can make him smile, no one can make him laugh. And he had a cord going down my pants. He had a remote control. And it was the last of the side shows, Royal American shows, where they still had the freak shows and everything. I was a freak, man. I got $100 a week, and I lived on the Midway, and I ate cotton candy and hot dogs on a stick for dinner. And I slept in the trailer thing. It was like a pull-out thing. It was a Hollywood Wax Museum trailer thing.
Did it fulfill for you a dream that you'd had? Was it great?
Well, it was very cool. You was just going. I can imagine just graduating high school, and my father was kind of appalled. But I mean, it's like what an adventure. We went to Winnipeg and Calgary, all throughout Canada, and we, I met a lot of people and carnies, and man, it was quite a time.
Well, I think it's really cool because most people, like I say, think about it or say it, but never do it. You did it. Yeah. So,
and I kind of dressed myself up in like a Sergeant Pepper kind of outfit type of thing,
right.
Leader. And I had a little mustache, and I did my little, the thing, and I would not blink. People would stand there and go, okay, he's going to blink. I trained myself not to blink. I would take a fork and jab it in my palm. And every time I started to blink, I would put the pressure in my palm. I would take the focus away from my eyes and onto my hand.
That's very interesting. Did you? And then, of course, at some point, that just became something you could do without that.
Yeah, and Yarnell did it naturally. When I trained her, she could not go without blinking. I go, how do you know how to do that? She goes, well, in school, I used to put the book in front of me and just open my eyes and just sleep with my eyes open, staring at the book. Like, whoa! She did that.
Well, that clearly, and we'll get to the clinkers too. But that clearly is what sells that bit, is that you don't blink.
You don't blink. And I used to say to her when I was training her, because it was really hard, I used to say, listen, man, dolls don't sweat. Okay, they don't sweat. We have to be absolutely fake. You know what I mean?
It's
once
that
you blink, it's over.
it's that mechanical move that you do coupled with the not blinking, and that really sells the whole thing. I think that's extraordinary. So at what point did you, because shortly thereafter you must have met Marceau somehow. How did that happen?
Well, after I got back from the Hollywood Wax Museum, the carnival business thing, I got a job at the Hollywood Wax Museum on
Hollywood Boulevard?
Hollywood Boulevard. Spoonie Singh was the owner. He owned the Hollywood Wax Museum. He paid me $24 a week to stand outside the Hollywood Wax Museum. And that's really where I honed my craft as far as working with the crowd, because those people were rowdy. And then Marcel Marceau's son, Michel Marceau, saw me perform at the Renaissance Fair. And he said to me, I was just starting to do mime. I met a guy named Billy Scudder, and he found me and put whiteface on me, and him and I became a team with another girl called the Cripplegate Roustabouts. We became Renaissance Fair folk. We danced around and did all that. I was doing mime and the robot, of course, and the puppet and all that stuff. I started honing my skills even more there. And Michel Marceau, Marceau's son, saw me, and he said, "You're the best mime. I've seen a lot of you. You must meet my father. I'm Marcel Marceau's son."
Wow.
I couldn't believe it because I saw his show. I couldn't believe how great it was.
So I saw him 3 times, 3 years in a row here at Heinz Hall in Pittsburgh when I was in high school.
Yes.
And it was just one of the extraordinary experiences to see this guy hold an audience so well, their attention so well with no words and just body movement. It was,
and that was when he was in his prime, when he was young, when he was, that's another thing. When you're young, you can do all that stuff. When you get older, you need to hang it up because you just don't have the timing anymore. And, he was, when I was with him, he was, I think he was 48. He was still very young, and he still had his chi, he still had that thing going.
So when you were over at his school and you decided that this was not really exactly for you because it was too formal?
Well, he came to see me at the Hollywood Wax Museum, and Michel, I remember he got off the plane with his fur coat, and we picked him up at the airport, and Michel goes, "Father, this is Robert Shields. He's fantastic. He's 19. He's unbelievable. You gotta." He goes, "It's ridiculous. How could he be fantastic at 19? That's impossible." So we went home, and then he saw me, and he couldn't believe the robot. He never saw anything like it. So he offered me a scholarship, and I stayed at the house. I lived at his house. I was the only one that ever got a scholarship. And within 2 weeks, I quit. I didn't like, I really did not like the other people who were mimes. They're all little Marcel Marceaus, and they're all from France and Germany and all these, and they were I came a little late, and they know I got a scholarship, and they put a lot of pressure on me, and I'm not really good in that kind of thing. I'm more of a solo,
I get the feeling that you have always been a bit of a maverick, and so you don't want to be confined by that.
Yeah. And I really failed at that school. I just couldn't grasp it. I didn't understand it. I didn't,
Were you disappointed? Was he disappointed?
He was very disappointed that I left. But years later, he said, "I had no idea that you were so original. I really was wrong, because what you've done and what you've created you're a unique invention." And I didn't know, because basically that's what I would tell any young performer. Stop copying other people. You got to copy them in the beginning, but you got to create your own stuff. You got to be a writer, a poet. You got to have your mind and body totally together, and you got to be so devoted that you put 5 hours a day. I did 5 hours a day in front of a mirror. I didn't have a teacher. I taught myself. Little things like making this glass not move. It looks easy. But it's not. It takes time.
The greats, including yourself, and you talk about the greats. I've said on this show more than once, Fred Astaire makes it look really easy, but it
Yeah.
took 1,000 hours to perfect the dance.
Exactly.
And so that's the same thing for you. When you make it look easy, that's when it's so special, because the audience thinks, well, how are you doing that? And then they try to do it and realize you just can't just do it.
Yeah.
You
The
actually
other
have to
thing
work
is,
at it.
I go to shows, I go to stage shows, and the minute the first thing happens, I go, whoop, that didn't work. Oh, that didn't work. Oh, that didn't work. Oh God, that should have done that. Oh God, what a lousy walk. Oh God, it's really hard. I'm constantly directing.
Are you talking about any show or a mime show?
And no, anything on stage.
Any show.
Stage to me is totally sacred. So the minute you walk on stage, what happens first? I've always helped other acts with this. The first thing you should do, like even a speaker, the first thing you should do is say something funny and then say another thing funny, and then another thing funny, and then get into your presentation.
Mm-hmm.
It's just, to me, it's all entertainment. So I was pretty much very detailed oriented in the way the Shields and Yarnell show was put together after. Well, I'm jumping ahead.
Yeah, that's all right. We'll definitely get there. So I'm curious, when you are developing a bit, early on you were developing bits, but over time, as you got more better at it, more professional, more fluid with it, are you always thinking about the audience, or are you only thinking about what you need to do to tell whatever little story you're telling?
I'm thinking that every audience member is like me,
In what way?
I went to see Bruce Springsteen once, and I realized his show was 5 hours, and I was going, man, you're really great, but 5 hours, leave him wanting more, man. And I used to go in a venue with Yarnell. I'd say to the promoter, how much time do you want us to do? Well, we want you to do an hour and a half, but if you want to go longer, no. But how much time can we get away with? He goes, well, an hour and 20. I'd be fine with that. Okay, good. Because that way we're going to leave them wanting more, and because of that, they always wanted an encore. So it was like, I'm always thinking about what the audience is doing, how they're fidgeting. When I would construct a sketch, I would think it's a beginning, a middle, and an end. Don't spend any time. Don't bring any fat in it. Don't stretch it out. And unfortunately, that's why I don't like mime, because most mime shows are too long and too boring, and they don't get to it fast. All of our sketches, most of them are 2.5, 3 minutes.
I think that is a great attribute to the development of those kinds of stories, because those, by the way, short stories are the hardest to develop and make good. The longer ones, you can spend time really developing something, but that then means you have to wait for some kind of event to happen. What you're talking about is much more challenging to get right.
Yes. Well, I don't know if it's challenging, but that's just the way it happened with me. And you say, well, how do you write a sketch, if you're asking that?
Yes. How do you write a sketch?
Well,
sure.
Let's say I do this monster frog. It's like, you know what I mean? But the jump that I do is like Nijinsky. I had amazing elevation. Like probably just as high as you can go.
I've seen pictures of you in midair, and you're way up there.
I would jump way up, and I would grab my feet, and I would actually go up, and I would hang out in the air. And so I developed the Princess and the Frog around that frog. I'm going to do this. Princess and the Frog. So I researched it. Oh, the Princess and the Frog. Oh, I get it. So, first I'm a frog, and then I do the jump, and then I turn around and I'm the princess with the lipstick and she's flat chested. Shit, damn. And she wishes for boobs. She gets boobs. Now she's doing boob tricks. She's juggling her boobs. All this stuff. And then I play two parts, the princess and the frog, and no, just the princess. And then she sees the frog. She grabs the frog. She kisses the frog. She puts the frog on the ground, turns around. Now I'm the frog. And I'm like, and the frog turns into this prince, and he's got everything great. And he looks down his pants and goes, well, you can't have it all. And then he grabs her, he kisses her, she's repelled, he goes back and forth, her, him. Finally, he grabs her, kisses her, she goes like this, boom, 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 turns into a frog, wham, flip, backflip, boom, and the crowd goes nuts, blackout. That's it.
Yeah. Yeah.
like there's no fat in it. It's just like, get to the point. The frog, the princess, the princess, the frog, kiss the frog, boom, bow, big bow, wow, back up.
Well,
So-
you're talking about the absolute core of great storytelling, which is no fat in any story.
Right, exactly.
And do you think of yourself, I assume you do, you think of yourself as a storyteller?
Absolutely.
You're not just showing off tricks. You're actually, there's a story to it.
This is something I've always told other mimes and clowns and stuff. I was a director of clowns for Ringling Brothers. I always told these guys that, you just have to tell a story and you have to do it fast, and you can't have any fat in there. It can't have any,
Because you lose the audience.
Yeah, you lose them.
You absolutely lose them. What would you say is the distinction between mime and traditional clowning? There's got to be some big difference.
There's nothing. And that's such bullshit. If you're a great mime, you're a great clown. If you're a great clown, you're a great mime. Skelton was a great clown, a great mime. Come on. Chaplin, Keaton, they're both. But I mean, Shields and Yarnell, think about it. A mime act getting entertainer of the year in Vegas 2 years in a row.
Crazy.
I mean, we're playing those big casinos, opening for Sinatra. Man, we had to be fucking snap, crackle, pop. It wasn't just like, mime and doing the wall and walking against the wind. No way. Marcel would fail there. He's an artiste. He's beautiful. But the kind of stuff that we were doing was basically rock and roll mime. It was flash pot mime. It was bam.
All right. So you a moment ago, you just took us through the development of the Frog and the Princess, the Princess and the Frog, however you want to call it. So let's go through the process of it. Your process of developing something like that. It can be that or something else that you want to talk about. When you have the idea, do you start physically to figure it out? Do you write sketch ideas down? What's your process? What's your methodology?
I get in a dance room with a big mirror and I start to walk around and I do the frog and I get an idea as far as I knew the Princess, the Frog. I was lucky enough that there's a story called The Princess and the Frog. So I read it and I changed it around and then started developing the different parts of it. And like anything else, you just work it and work it and work it and work it and work it. I mean, you just work it all day long and keep working it, and it's just never ending.
Okay, so one thing is leading to another. You're trying things, you're dropping things work and don't work. But do you at some point, do you formalize it, as in, do you set it down in writing somehow, or how do you memorize it?
With what I do is there's sections of it that are really good. Like when I become a woman in The Princess Frog, when I become the princess, she's great because I really become a chick. Put my hair up and I do the whole thing with the lipstick and the eyelashes and the whole thing of putting the makeup on. And it's just a really fun thing of all the components of a woman getting dressed. So that's one little section of it. A woman getting dressed, the whole thing, she's all dressed up and then she goes like this and she's flat as a board and she's like, shit, And so that was a great component, coming up with that part of it. And that just happens naturally, it's like, because there's the princess, there's the frog, and then there's the prince. And the prince is this other character that I developed. And so, they're all just components that you push together. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. But I guess I want to take it a step further. So you've got this concept, you've got this idea, you've got this story, and now you've got it. You were working in a day and age when we didn't have video. We didn't really have cell phones with video in it. It would be very cost prohibitive to record yourself with film. So how would you keep track of it? How would you know what you were doing? Was it just by doing it so much that it was?
I would write it down. I would write first this, then second that, third that. And it's funny you should say about video, because in 1973 or 4, I met Lorene, and she was a dancer, I spent $10,000, which is a lot of money back then.
Oh, a lot.
And I bought a video camera with the reel-to-reel video. And that's how I trained her, because I couldn't she needed to watch it over and over and over again. And that's interesting because we were doing crude video back then.
So that answers the question in a much bigger way, which is great, because what you're saying is she was able to, because you had this recording device, a video recording device of some kind, she was able to actually see what the difference was versus only looking in a mirror, which is a little different than looking at it on a playback.
Yeah, because she had to start from scratch. And, I remember teaching her this, where this thing doesn't move, it could be that way or that way or that way. It doesn't.
For the listeners who can't see Robert, he's actually making moves through the air where it looks like his hands are standing still, but he's moving around it.
Right. Well, that was really hard for her. It was really difficult because her thing she would always move a little. And it was just like, she finally nailed it, but she was never really clean at it. She was clean at other stuff. Her characters were spot on. So she had to rewind the tape over and over again, 1,000 times a day, to watch me and to mimic me do those moves.
So let's talk about Lorene for a bit, because obviously she's a huge part of your history. What was it about her when you met her that you yourself thought, wow, she could actually do this, since she was not a mime at that time? She was a dancer, right?
Oh, yeah. And she wasn't just a dancer. She was a dancer with Bob Fosse. She was a dancer with Peter Gennaro. She was a dancer, dancers. Back in the day, I don't know if you know this, but the dancers on the variety shows were really, really skilled. They did everything.
Tremendously.
Yeah, she was one of the top gals. Her and Tony Basil, Terry Garr, even Goldie Hawn was a dancer for a while, and David Winters and all these guys, Jaime Rogers, all those guys were in West Side Story, all those cats, and they're all very good friends. I still am friends with a lot of them on Facebook, and they were the crew. Every time the Elvis Presley specials and Carol Burnett variety shows, Gary Moore shows, Red Skelton shows, Dean Martin, goes on and on, man. Hollywood Palace, there were all those dancers, and she was one of them. She was a dancer on Shindig.
So now you've met her. Where did you meet?
Okay, this is what happened. I met her on my first TV show. I was 19 years old, like Sid and Marty Krofft.
Yeah.
A show called Falderall.
Right.
And they hired me to be this mime. They've never seen anything like this, what I was doing. They saw me at the Renaissance Fair, and they said, we wanted to design the whole show around you. You're going to be like the narrator, and we're going to be at a Renaissance Fair. It's a pleasure fair, they called it.
Wow.
And then Lorene was hired to be one of the dancers on the show. It was me. I never really got billing, but it was Ricky Nelson, Ema Sumac, Toady Fields, Mickey Rooney.
What a bizarre combination of people.
What a bizarre combination. And it was Puff and Stuff and that kind of thing, Sid Marty Krofft.
Sure.
And look, I saw Lorene rehearsing with all the dancers. I've never seen anything like that, man, because you have to understand, I'm just in my little world. And these cats are so good, the way they do turns. They do like 8 turns, they're just, their legs go up. They're all ballet trained, man. And the women, their bodies were just insane. They all had bodies like Bo Derek or something. It was like, whoa.
Well,
so all of a sudden,
a lot of work.
Lorene looked like Liza Minnelli, but with a body that Liza wishes she had. And then she comes up to me because the choreographer says, by the way, we found this young mime. I don't know if you people know what a mime is, but he is brilliant. And he's on the show, and they're all like looking and wondering what. And then Lorene comes up to me and goes, I saw you at the Renaissance Fair. I was with my boyfriend, and I left him and followed you all day long and just watched you all day long behind you. And I went, really? She goes, I can't believe what you do. And I'm like, whoa, wow, she's talking to me? So she goes, do you like horses? And I went, sure. I don't really know anything about horses. She goes, you want to go horseback riding? I have a horse. And I go, okay. And so we met at her horse place, and we were together for 11 years after that.
Okay. So what you saw in her was not only her passion and her ability to work with her own body as a dancer, You must have also seen, I mean, guess, was it her interest in mime that she had seen you do it?
Her interest in mime, and also she had a very strong comic ability. And also I had the idea of, if I'm going to take this to the next level, I cannot be the next Marcel Marceau. I can't do that. I'm going to have to I had a great idea to find a woman who kind of looks like me and to do relationship mime and stories about relationships, a couple type things, and have two of us, a man and a woman. I thought it would be really novel to do that.
You were the first to do that, were you not?
Sure. Yeah. And so I auditioned different girls in San Francisco, and there are always problems. This one, her body was, God, her face is great, and she's a good mime. But I could teach her to be a great mime, but her body, it's not the right. Everything's got to be right. Well, Lorene was the perfect fit. Her body was she was thin. She was, and she was totally trained.
And she could be physically precise in her movement.
Right. And she was an incredible tap dancer. Gene Kelly considered her one of the finest tap dancers. I mean, she really could hoof.
Wow.
Which was really a great part of our show, our live show. I mean, her tap dance numbers brought down the house, man.
Well, did you tap as well? I don't remember you tapping.
Oh, no, I don't tap. And she started tapping when she was 5 years old. She got a scholarship with Margin Gower Champion. She was a dancer at 14. She bought her first sports car at 15. She was engaged to Bobby Hatfield of the Righteous Brothers. I mean, wow. she had a life, and then when we met, that was it. She just left that life, left her career, and moved to San Francisco with me.
All right. So now you've moved into a much bigger league at that point when you start to go do TV shows together and you're touring around the world and so on. How do you go about keeping that fresh? How do you continue to build that act? That must have taken an enormous amount of work.
Well, in the early days, it was magical. I was working Union Square in San Francisco, and I developed the act for her to work in Ghirardelli Square, and we made really good money. It was amazing to be street artists, and everything was great. And we started doing live shows in San Francisco, and then we got to be really well known. I was already well known in San Francisco, but everyone says you got to go to LA. So when we went to LA, we made it pretty fast. First thing we did was the Ted Mack Amateur Hour. There, they brought Ted Mack out, and out of 3,500 people who auditioned and performed, we came in first.
Wow!
And that was great. And then there was the Burt Reynolds talent search, and we came in second on that one. And one thing led to another, and we started getting a little notoriety. We started being on little local shows, and then we got a job. Tony Basil was, of course, Lorene's friends with Tony Basil, and Tony Basil was doing the show in Las Vegas called Doodah Days, and Tony put us in the show, and Merv saw the show and said, I want to devote my whole show tomorrow at Caesar's Palace to this young couple.
For our younger listeners, Merv is Merv Griffin, who was a famous talk show host.
Yeah, we were on a show 40 times. Must have been.
That's amazing. I mean, that really is amazing.
He devoted the whole show to us. He says, I have found something, I've never seen anything like this before. And that really got, Steve Bender was doing something in Las Vegas, and he used to date Lorene. He was thinking, hey, maybe I'll date her again. And our name's on the marquee, and he calls her up. She goes, Steve, I'm married. Can you see our act? He really didn't want to. And he sees our act. Steve Bender, he directed the Elvis Presley special and a lot of TV shows, many shows. Diana Ross and Pee Wee Herman, Soupy Sales, all kinds of stuff. And he said to me, what do you want to do? I've never seen anything like this. What do you want to do? I said, I want us to have our own variety show.
Well, how do you develop that? I mean, you've got a mime act of little short pieces. They're not, it's not like one big long story. You're not going to do a half-hour sitcom with it. It's going to be a variety of show of some kind. I think that's the natural way to go.
Yeah.
How do you develop that? What do you do?
Well, he said, what it would be like? I said, well, first of all, I think all the variety shows are terrible. I think most of them are just people saying words. Nobody acts out anything. They're not physical comics. That's what we are. And he got us on the Mac Davis show. He was directing the Mac Davis show, and we got great ratings on that. We did robot sketches. And then
Was this was when you were developing the Clinkers?
yeah, that's when it developed. On the Mac Davis show, the Clinkers were developed on that show.
Because I certainly vividly recall watching the Clinkers.
Yeah,
and
everything was developed on that show. And it was the first sketch I wrote on that was robots eating breakfast. But then because of the show that we had to do one every week, we were able to get some writers. And one of the writers was Pat Proft.
Oh, sure.
Lenny Rips, Danny Simon, who was a lead writer, and he was Neil Simon's brother.
Yeah, brother.
And Danny taught me never do shtick for shtick's sake, and he taught me so much good stuff. And Pat and Lenny are still good friends of mine. Those guys, I learned a lot from them. And every week we had to do another sketch, robots in the supermarket. I'd have ideas like robots in the supermarket. You go in the supermarket, and Danny came up with all these amazing bits like, please don't squeeze the Charmin. Like there's a robot, I'm squeezing the toilet paper, and Lorene's in the egg section, and she looks at me, and then she's holding eggs and she squeezes the egg. So everything meant something because of Danny. He pieced it together, and that's how I learned to write. A lot of everything I've learned is from him.
So a huge number of very influential people claim to have learned from Danny Simon. Woody Allen learned from Danny Simon. Neil Simon learned from Danny Simon.
There you go. And so, Danny Simon taught a class at UCLA, and he would use Shields and Yarnell a lot for physical, how he developed our routines, because he was the stickler for absolute detail as far as you don't go to there until you do this. Why would you do this without doing that? You have to be, if you do that, you have to do this, and you have to complete. It was amazing.
So and that's fundamental storytelling. That's you've got to something has to lead to something so it makes sense. Otherwise, it's just stuff.
Exactly. It's just stuff. It's just shtick for stick's sake, and that's the problem.
And that is a problem. A lot of people do shtick for stick's sake, and it gets boring fast. That's the problem. And that's the number one cardinal sin of all storytelling. Don't be boring. Right. And you guys certainly were not boring. That's definitely for sure. You were a very exciting act to watch. So how do you then take that and make a Vegas act out of it? Well, you had a TV show before the Vegas act, or was the Vegas act before TV?
We had a theatrical act way before the TV show. So we always had that. I mean, I had my own one-man show. I had that in San Francisco. I was opening for the Rolling Stones. I was opening for Miles Davis. I was opening for Tower of Power.
Wow.
Incredible string band. Hot Licks, Dave Hicks and his Hot Licks. I was opening for all kinds of people. I think that
was Dan Hicks.
Dan Hicks, yeah. And I was open at the boarding house. I opened for Charles Pierce.
Wow. That's going back.
I opened for the Coquettes one time. I mean, I was an opening act, and then finally I got to have such a name in San Francisco that I was starting to headline, and I had my own one-man show, and I developed all my sketches. The documentary that they're doing on me, the guy goes, God, everything happened to you in like 3 years. All the major things happened within 3 years. You developed this, you developed that, and you went there, you met Lorene, you started training Lorene. She didn't have any solo sketches, so I had to develop solo sketches for her. And it took a long time because she wasn't really a mime. That's when she said, I can tap. And she'd go out and tap and bring down the house.
Wow.
She tapped a cappella. She just go out there and go, she tapped like this. 8 turns. I mean, it was unbelievable.
So like Gene Krupa.
Exactly like Gene Cooper. Yeah.
I mean, that's just
one of her best friends was Fayard Nicholas. Man, they used to tap together.
With Fayard Nicholas of the Nicholas Brothers.
Yeah, they were tight.
Wow, I did not know that. That's extraordinary. So, all right. So, how demanding was it over not just that 3-year period, but over a much longer period, how demanding was it physically to keep doing that? How did you prepare your body for that? What did you do?
You don't ride motorcycles. You don't eat 5 hours before you perform. You don't ski. You know, you don't do any of that stuff.
But were you a workout person? Did you work out a lot?
And that's the good thing about being with her, because she was a stickler I had to learn ballet. She taught me about the knees. She said, you got to wear knee pads. You're young right now, but you're going to ruin your knees. You're going to do this. And she trained me. And she's the one who was like, made sure that we worked out an hour before the show. I would just go on, hell with it. I was like, and then, but with her, it was like we had to do all that. And
she probably saved you from a shorter career where you might have hurt yourself.
Yeah, she'd go, come here, buddy. Come on. Sit with me. We got to stretch before we do the pliés, all the stuff I had to do with her. I mean, it was like endless, and I still do it. That's why I'm still in shape. I'm still a 32 waist. I still go to the gym and do pliés, and I do all my ballet stuff, and I hate it. And I do yoga and ballet and lift weights, but I do it because it's part of my,
Well, that's really important. And I wanted to hear that you continue to work with your own physicality, because you clearly had, a very lithe body early on in your life. And then you can lose that pretty easily if you don't take care of it.
Exactly. It's like driving a Ferrari. We had Ferraris we were driving around, and our bodies were just like these incredible, impeccable machines that did amazing things.
Well, that's it. I mean, and I think we're portraying the essence of storytelling, which is no words. It's just visual. And so you go back to the original silent movies, you were doing that only differently and live.
Yeah. And also I started to experiment. I got a recording studio, and I started experimenting with voiceovers, and I started learning voices, and I started doing dubbing, and I would have narration, submitted for your approval. You're watching a man with a painted white face, closing himself in with an invisible wall. If we journey deeper inside of his mind, it probably would sound like this. I didn't want to be a mime. I want to be a doctor or a lawyer. It was my daddy's idea. He said, damn it, you're going to be a mime. You're going to paint your face white and build invisible walls. So I would do these, because mime was I started to do these outrageous things where I swallow radios and become different stations. And I would do things like this weird wizard shit where I would become this weird wizard. And I'd drink this potion and turn into James Brown. So it was all these weird concoctions of voiceovers and narrative trailers on tape with a loop. You understand?
So you started to combine mime with actual sound.
I did. And those pieces took 4 or 5 months to put together. I did them on a reel to reel, and I spliced the tape and did all the whole thing. It was like, man, that was hard work.
Well, okay. So
yeah.
So we've been talking about mime for a long time, and I want to get to this other part of your life. At what point did you start to think to yourself, maybe I don't want to do this so much anymore? When did you turn toward creating art? How did that happen?
Well, first of all, I was creating art way before I was a mime. I mean, remember, I flunked the 3rd grade. And
so you were doing art as a kid?
Oh, yeah. My mom's an artist, and I was the teacher's assistant in ceramics. And art was my life. And even when I was doing Shields and Yarnell, I had my own studio, and I would make these ceramic castles that were just amazing, beautiful pieces. And I had exhibits and stuff. And so art was really where I always went to. I didn't go to drugs. I went to art. I was lucky.
Did you think of yourself when you were doing mime as an artist?
I never thought of myself as an artist. I just thought that art is, thank God I have that, so I won't be so bored. Because I mean, I don't go to sports, and I love tooling around and making shit. So were you making stuff while you were doing the shows when you were with Lorene? Oh yeah, I'd make stuff backstage. I'd bring my art supplies. I would always do it. Yeah, constantly.
So you've always been an artist. That's not ever not been part of your life.
Exactly.
All right. So at what point did you think to yourself, I want to wind down doing as much of mime as you were doing and turn more toward making art more full time?
It was 2009. I did my one-man show, and I did 28 shows. It was a great tour, just me. And at the end of the last show, the next day, I was 60 years old then.
Oh,
At
wow.
the end of it was the end of the day, I couldn't walk. I was like, I could walk, but I was almost like, something was wrong, man. And I went to my chiropractor and she told me, I never forget, she goes, well, you got 60-year-old knees.
Mm.
She goes, you want to be jumping around like this? Because if you keep doing this, you're going to be in a wheelchair when you're 70. I'm like, holy shit. And I quit right then because I am a very physical act. I'm a rock and roll mime. I'm not some kind of guy who's just going to go out there and be feathery. I'm like, my characters are tough and they have a lot of gravel to them. And you know, I move with a certain way, the way I like to do things. I didn't want to have any restrictions on me because once I get on stage, you know, I just cut loose, man. I can't help it.
You're full of passion, energy, and life, and you can't hold that back, can you?
Yeah, you know, like I'll show you something. Like if I pick up a chicken, it's okay. But if I do it like this, you see that energy? It's like you can feel it.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, just it's like boom. You know what I mean? It's like it takes energy to create magic like that. You know, and I just couldn't do it anymore, knowing that, you know, it's going to hurt I would get hurt.
All right. So now you had the good graces to have been making art all along. It wasn't like you suddenly had to stop and start on something else. You had it already. So you started to focus on, creating art.
Actually in 1988, I opened my first gallery. I was doing both at the same time forever. I used to wholesale. Oh yeah, I had 5 stores in Sedona, 1 store in Scottsdale, and I wholesaled to 2,000 stores. I had 80 employees. I had my own hour show on QVC. I had a major career as a designer. I designed for other companies. I have a big catalog of stuff that I've made and designed.
Wow. Wow.
Yeah.
Well, I've seen a bunch of it online, and I certainly recommend folks to absolutely go look at robertshields.com and look at all the wonderful art that's available for sale there. There's a lot of it.
Thank you. Yeah, robertshields.com. Also, if you go to eBay and you just type in Robert Shields art, my stuff, all this old stuff will come out that I made, that I designed, that I made, that was in all these stores and Hallmark stores and ornaments and furniture.
So describe what your work is like for those who've never seen it. Describe it.
It's kind of, well, there's many aspects of it. I have many styles.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I mean, if you want, it looks like it's done by many different people, but it's kind of whimsical and playful. And I love symbols and God, I just.
So I will tell you the hallmark of, because right now we're recording this via Zoom and I'm looking at Robert's, I guess your living room or whatever this is, but it's filled with his art. It's just spectacular stuff. And so I would say the hallmark, wow, look at this beautiful horse that he's showing me. Let me say that the hallmark of your work that I have noticed over and over again in all the different pieces I've looked at is they're full of color and energy.
Ah, thanks. Yeah. Full of color and energy. I mean, if you go on my website, you'll see it looks like it's robertshields.com. So it's kind of hard to explain.
It's extremely imaginative. There's a lot of stuff that feels like it's from the stars, from the universe, from animals and the kingdom of Earth. It's really, very energetic and full of wonderful stuff to look at. I highly urge people to go and look at it. So do you think that mime has had resonance in your artwork?
Absolutely.
In what way?
Well, I like to show people sometimes how I paint, and I paint like a dancer.
What does that mean? How do are you dancing around while you're painting?
You see my hand, how it works like that?
Yes.
Like my brush works like that too. When I draw or paint, it's like that.
It's very silken and feels like waves.
Like a sword, like, I can dance. I could draw people just dancing and moving and
what do you need? Do you need music when you're working?
No, I don't need anything. I mean, in fact, my friends come over. I said, "You come over. I'm working in my studios, but you just come over. We'll talk, and I can talk and be on the phone. It's the best time to talk to me is when I'm. In fact, I thought that's what we were going to do with this. I went, I'm not going to do an interview. I'll just sit here and paint while you're talking to me because I can do that. It doesn't. I've been doing it for so long. I don't have to think about it. It just comes out of me.
Wait, so do you have specific places that you turn to for inspiration, or is it just naturally pouring out of you all the time?
It really is. I never have a block. I surround myself with this crazy house I live in. It's like a penny arcade. I collect antique toys, and there's cases of antique toys from the 20s and 30s, and old puppets and marionettes, and it's exciting.
So that's your inspiration, or is the things that you collect inspire you?
It is. I love them. I play guitar. I do a lot of things with music and guitars and hearts. I love hearts and different kinds of animals, hummingbirds and dragonflies and turtles and horses and shamans. I do a lot of shamans and medicine women and sages and healers and magicians and fortune tellers, and kind of mix it all up and
sculpture and paintings and giclées and so on. Do you ever feel like you've made something that you cannot let go? You can't sell it to somebody? Do you ever make something where it's yours and you're going to hang on to it, or is everything in your life that you've made so giveawayable, sellable, whatever it would be?
It is because I make it. I make it all the time. I'm constantly creating it. And it's like people come over here and they just fall in love with it. I go, okay, you can have it. And I can always make another one. But I mean, I don't know. I'm not really attached.
So you don't get attached to it.
No, I mean, I make these tables too. I make tabletops. See that?
Yeah, beautiful.
Yeah,
it looks like it's an artist's
an artist palette.
Artist palette. Thank you for saying that.
Yeah, great.
Yeah, it's fantastic.
I'm not attached to it. I'm not really attached to anything like that. I'm not.
All right. So for you've sort of described it. Your day is just a big dance then, yeah?
Yeah. I wake up in the morning and I meditate a little and I make some tea and I start working and go into my studio, and I have this big TV in there. So I watch old movies from the 30s and the 40s.
Wow.
Love those.
That's what I was getting at. You do have something that you have to have around you, and that's this old TV with old movies on it, or a TV.
Yeah, it's definitely there's I love George Raft, these old gangster movies, and Betty Davis, Get Ready, Fasten Your Seatbelts, and all these old film noir. I love it. I can't get enough of it. And I watch a lot of really bad movies that are like not B movies, but C movies. I just listen to the dialogue. And because I'm not watching, I'm just listening. It's great, man.
So that's what you need in the background. It's not music, it's dialogue.
Right.
I think that's probably pretty unusual. I think most people that are creating like you create probably need some kind of music, but you need dialogue.
This is the deal. I have a very successful little business here. I get about 10 orders a day. And then when I do an email blast, I get about, 20, 30 orders a day. So I got a big stack of orders I'm filling from my internet. It's pretty neat. I have about 6,000 people that are devoted customers, and they buy from me all the time. They buy for their kids and their mother and their daughter. And then they find out about it because it's free shipping. My website's free shipping. That's why I do so well. It's free shipping.
That's the only thing that they like is the free shipping.
I dawned on me.
You could just go outside and get yourself a pebble off the street. As long as it was shipped free, it would be good to go.
That really makes a difference,
So, all right, your work embodies, I think, emotion. I think that's an important component of what you do. You did it as a mime and you're doing it as an artist. It's full of emotion and passion. And I would say it's mostly joyful and uplifting. It's not negative emotion. It's a positive emotion. Do you have any tricks for finding that emotion in your work, or is it just you? Is that just pouring out of you?
Well, first of all, if you're not feeling well, if your body doesn't feel well, if you ate all the wrong food the night before, if you drank too much, if you're not going to feel like doing anything. You're just going to kind of be like the rest of the sheeple walking around, hello, you know what I mean? So it's very important to take care of your vehicle so you have all this energy, That's why, it's important to, like, in the morning, not eat too much, you don't eat too much, just eat a little, and so make sure you do the yoga. I do the yoga in the middle of the day, and keep my chi going, so.
Do you ever start to feel yourself tightening up because you haven't done that and you need to stop and actually do that?
I do, and that's why I have one of those massage chairs. It's time to sit in that, time to stretch, time to go outside for a walk around the lake,
And I imagine it doesn't get any easier as you get older.
No.
You got to work it even harder sometimes. Yeah.
Yeah, but you know what? It's not so bad. I still feel like I'm like 40.
Well, you're in phenomenal shape. That's what that is. What would you say are the biggest challenges in doing what you're doing? Is it filling all those orders, or what are the biggest challenges for you?
Well, first of all, at 5 o'clock, I'm done. You used to be able to go longer.
Yeah.
At 9:30, sometimes 8:30, I'm in bed. I mean, that's just what happens.
Well, you're an early riser.
Yeah, I'm an early riser, but I mean, that's a challenge because I used to go till 10, 11 o'clock. There's no real challenge. I've been doing this a long time, and so it's kind of.
So you have it down. You've got it down to where you know exactly what you're doing.
Yeah, it's so much fun.
Is there one particular? I know you do so many different things and use different mediums. Is there one that is your favorite that you love to turn back to every time?
Well, there's this one thing I'm working on that it's multi-layered.
Wow, look at that. It's a big starburst. It's a big colorful starburst.
Yeah, it's just crazy, man. I love making these. It's a sun with a heart in the middle, and it's got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 pieces of metal on top of each other.
Oh, it's exquisite. It's all metal, yes?
Yeah, it's all metal.
What kind of metal? Is it copper? What is it?
It's just sheet metal that I cut, it's just cool as hell. I'm very excited about this layering thing that's going on. I can layer it, and it's very exciting.
Do you cut every piece yourself?
I don't.
You sometimes have patterns made.
Well, I draw out the pattern, and I design for this company called Art, and I get royalties, and I make them a lot of money, and they have my metal. They cut my metal for me, so it's really cool.
And then you hand paint every piece.
Yeah, like yesterday, 400 pounds of cut metal came here. It was like $6,000 on a pallet
of cut metal.
I have a 30-foot building that all the raw metal goes into, and I have another building on my property that's a gallery, and another building that's a paint booth, and then I have 2 giant art studios in my house. One's a bead room, and where I glue things on and do all these kind of add-ons, and then another one is a gigantic art studio where I sit every day and paint.
And would you say the majority of your time is spent painting?
Yeah.
The majority of your time as a painter.
Yeah.
I do want to ask you, this has fascinated me. I noticed in your doing research on you that one of the people you've obviously met and worked with a huge number of really famous, influential people in your life. But the one person who for me stood out was your relationship with Groucho Marx.
Yes.
Can you talk about what that was like? Because he was a hero to me.
Thank you. Groucho Marx, Sinatra tried to get him to go to Vegas. He didn't do it, and he never went anywhere. But he saw us on TV, and he fell in love with our work. And we were invited over to his house, and this is a great story. Lorene is really sweet, but I have a comics mind, so I understand. I'll just tell you what happened. We're sitting there and we're drinking soup for he's very quiet. And Lorene just feels like she wants to break the ice. So she looks at him and goes, Groucho, we just love you so much. You are so loved. And he just gets up from his soup and looks at her in disgust. Remember, it's Groucho. And like, oh shit, not another one of these people, these monkeys. And I just look at him, I go, yeah, you're okay. But why did you let your brother Zeppo in your movies? That guy had no talent at all. Why'd you put him in there? And he just sprays his soup all over the table. I got him to laugh, and that was my relationship with Groucho. He wanted me there every day. I would be honest with him, and we became very good friends because I understand comics. I had the same thing with Bob Hope. We're in China doing some Bob Hope Road to China show. And Bob's ordering everybody around. He's ordering his cue card guy, Barney. Bob's really into cue cards. He had cue cards taped on the Great Wall.
Oh,
And
gosh.
he's walking down the Great Wall, and Barney, God damn it, Barney, God damn it, you got that word wrong. And I just, in front of like 80 people, I just went, hey, Hope, why don't you shut the fuck up? If you don't do there's some guy pumping gas in Cleveland who's a lot funnier than you are, and we'll get him in here. And he's just about ready to kill me. And he's from Cleveland. And he gets just about ready to kill me. He comes and says, come here a minute. And he puts his arm around me. He goes, I love this kid. And I've done that with all these guys, all these old comics. They were, for some reason, they thought we were just great. All of them. I mean, Danny Kaye and Danny Thomas, Red Skelton was a great friend of mine. I mean, Lucille Ball, I went to her house and wrote her some stuff. And I was friends with all those old guard, Milton Berle, all those guys.
Well, you had a sensibility that they understood.
Well, no, you know what they liked? They hated. They couldn't stand. Here's one time Dean Martin was on the Hollywood Palace, and he goes, and this next act, the Rolling Stones. Ugh. And so they hated Boss Gags and the Rolling. They didn't understand it. So when we came out, we were something they could grasp.
Well, you harked back to their beginnings, which was vaudeville, exactly. And it felt that way.
I was invited to Gene Kelly's house for dinner. I mean, we're invited all the time. We go to these places because they really liked us. So that was great. James Cagney would come and watch us shoot. It was pretty neat.
Well, yeah, and heady. And the thing that's impressive is that you were not fazed by it. You didn't become cowed by it. You just went right into the lion's mouth.
Well, I was always respectful. I couldn't. Hanging out with Groucho was some of the greatest moments of my life. I one time said to him, hey, Groucho, think of a name of a new club, on Hollywood Boulevard. What would you call it? Sunset Boulevard. What would you call it? He just like that. He goes, Club Foot. And I used to do my routines for him. And he goes, that's funny. That's not funny. He goes, words are funny, but some words aren't funny. Baloney's not funny, but pumpernickel's funny.
I have to tell you, I'm a little jealous that you got to spend that kind of time with Groucho Marx. I would have loved to have met him, never did, but he was unique. He was a truly unique, creative artisan.
He was so wonderful to me. And we used to watch, they go, what do you want to do with Groucho today? I go, well, let's watch Duck Soup. And he had a big theater in his house in Beverly Hills.
Yeah.
Groucho, you want to watch a movie with Robert? He goes, okay. And so we're watching Duck Soup in this nice theater in there. And I just can't believe I'm sitting next to Groucho. I can't believe I'm looking at this guy in this big screen. I'm going, holy shit. It's Groucho. Who doesn't love Groucho Marx?
Exactly.
And so every time someone entered the scene, he goes, see that guy? I go, yeah, he's dead. See that woman right there? The one in the black dress? Yeah, what about her? She's dead. See the waiter right there? The waiter coming out with a funny hat? I go, yeah, he's dead. So the whole thing, all he was counting were the people that were dead.
And he was still alive.
Yeah.
So I will tell you, I spent a couple of years as a tour guide at Universal Studios, going up and down the hill on the tram. And when you get a really, really very unenthusiastic group of people on the tram, some guides, I didn't, some guides would do what they called a dead tour. And the whole tour was, over here this is where this movie took place. And the star of that movie, they're dead. And the whole thing would be dead. everybody would be dead. And at the end of the tour, the line was, "Thank you, you've been a very lively group." And it was a standard dead tour.
Oh
So
my God.
that reminds me of Groucho. That's very funny. Well, I'm just having a ball here talking for close to an hour and 10 minutes to Robert Shields.
Oh, okay.
And we're going to slowly wind this thing down. I'm wondering, you've told us so many wonderful stories. Can you think of one or more stories in which something weird, strange, quirky, offbeat, or just plain funny beyond what you've already told us?
Well, I have a lot of those. One of them was when I was in China with Bob Hope, and Baryshnikov was flown in there, and everyone was making a big fuss about him. And for some reason, him and I became really good friends, and we started hanging out together a lot. Even when we off the tour, he'd come out for dinner. But when we were in China, we were in Shanghai one time, and this is when they were wearing blue suits and little blue hats with a red star. There's a communist. We were the first ones in,
Right.
And it was Bob Hope's Road to China. Yeah. Anyway, there was marijuana growing all over everywhere. I mean, pot was just growing. It was just like coming. It was like on the side of the road.
They weren't cultivating. They weren't cultivating it. It was just growing.
It was just growing. So
Wow.
Misha, they call him Misha. Misha and I grabbed all this pot, and we went up to the hotel room. We must have had 5 kilos of it, and we're drying it out with hair dryers and rolling it up and smoking it. And we got so smashed that we couldn't even do it was pretty much.
So, all right, last question for today. Can you offer up a solid piece of advice or a tip for those who are just starting out, or maybe they're in a little bit and they need to get to the next level? What do you say to people?
I would always say that the most important thing you can do is be funny, no matter what, and start writing comedy and go, I can't do that. We'll start anyway, and get in a comedy club and start learning how to bomb. It's very important to stand in front of an audience and just fail, because you get used to failing, you'll get good, and start writing about your life and just be perfectly honest about it. If you want to be a dancer or a writer, whatever you want to be, just start developing comedy. That's one thing. Also, with your presentation tape, if you ever have a presentation tape, you need to keep it to 3 minutes. That's it. Even a minute and a half. Leave them wanting more. And also, if you really want to make it in show business, you need to be original. You need to learn learn all you can, but you have to be original. You'll never make it if you're not,
I think all of those 3 pieces of advice are extraordinarily valuable. And, you've been there and done it. And I think that it's testament that you did all those things. You were definitely unique and original. That's for sure.
Thank you.
Well, I just can't tell you how much I appreciate you being on the show today, Robert. This has been fantastic. Robert Shields has been with us for a good hour and almost 15 minutes. And I just want to thank you profusely for spending some time with me today on StoryBeat.
Oh, good. And also on my website, there's a thing with videos. So if you want to see videos and clips, you can go to robertshields.com and you can look at the Shields and Yarnell stuff and videos and stuff.
Well, and it's fantastic to watch because it's, they're really good. That's the truth. Thank you again, Robert. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, buddy boy. I appreciate you.
And so we've come to the end of today's StoryBeat. If you like this episode, won't you please take a moment to give us a comment, rating, or review on whatever app or platform you're listening to. Your support helps us bring more great StoryBeat episodes to you. StoryBeat is available on all major podcast apps and platforms, including Apple Podcasts, YouTube, Spotify, iHeartRadio, Stitcher, TuneIn, and many others. Until next time, I'm Steve Cuden, and may all your stories be unforgettable.